Thanks for tuning into another talk here at the Product-Led Festival. Hope you're enjoying the event so far, because we've got even more juicy knowledge and insights from product-led pioneers heading your way. Remember to have your questions ready and get the tailored answers you need from the experts themselves. Sit back and enjoy. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Product-Led Festival. I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, Kate Zasada, who is joining us from Zapier. Kate is a group PM there, and today is going to be talking about B2B versus B2C. Are the lines blurring, based on her experience in different industries? So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Kate to the virtual stage. Hi, Kate. One second, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of technical difficulties. It would not be a virtual conference without one or two of these. So everyone just hang tight. Here we go. Thank you, Galen, for your understanding, and Musavir. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience. As Heather mentioned, my name is Kate. I'm the product lead for growth and revenue at Zapier, where we're working to democratize automation for small businesses. And today I want to talk about how consumer product management tactics are increasingly relevant for B2B products, because we're all building products for people. I'm speaking from my personal experience as a consumer product manager who honestly never considered working in B2B when thinking about my career path. And now here I am working at a product-led B2B company, and it's been a really good experience. Maybe you're a product manager thinking about making the switch to B2B at a product-led company, or if you're trying to be more product-led in your current company and you're curious about what translates from consumer products and what does not. Just a note, my internet connection might be a little fuzzy, so my video will probably turn off, but I'm still here and chatting with you. And we're off. So when I was getting started in my product management career, I think it's really common to choose a lane and stick with it. Consumer product managers rarely make the leap to B2B. It's likely the thing we do. The lines between products that are purely for consumers or for businesses have blurred. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to win over humans working at businesses who've come to expect a different level of user experience from the tools they use at work all day, which requires consumer insights to grow your product. So the first 8 years of my career, I worked at consumer companies. It was my identity, my brand. When you ask me what I do, I would say I work on consumer products, because it's shorthand for good at what B2B or B2C means, right? But I chose the path of consumer by accident. And back when I was first getting started, I kind of branded myself as a UX-focused product manager. People had a lot of interest or questions about that. What does that mean? How do you do it? But it's so obvious now, today, that product managers should have been focused on user experience all along, because you need to understand your customers. And I think the same transformation is happening in product-led growth. We're in the middle of a transformation. But we're going to look back, and it's going to see today. One is, what does consumer or B2B even mean in the world of today's products? It's useful to explain what your company does, but is this the right way to be framing the skills and tactics that we use? And I'll also share some of my observations on what's been transferable for me as a consumer product manager focused on business products. So this question that I posed in the introduction, is the line between B2B and B2C blurring? Implies that there's a clear distinction between the business and consumer markets.
Kate, 1 second. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I am unable to turn off your camera. If I turn off your camera, I'll turn off your mic as well. Can you see in the top right hand menu? Yes.
I got it. It was not there before.
Okay. Oh, good. We're not good, but yeah, continue. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's all good. So there's this spectrum that I have been thinking about in building products for business. I see the furthest end of consumer products like social media or games, purely designed to entertain users and optimized to find ways to get users to spend more time with your product. The mechanics on this end of the spectrum are wildly different than what you would expect to see in enterprise software, at least for now. And on the opposite end is true enterprise software, where buyers are finance teams, completely separate from users, with many complex business cases and legal requirements, which lead them to not necessarily have a reputation for being user-friendly, or sometimes even no interest in being easy to use. So when I look at this spectrum, I see the things in this or commerce platforms, which have to marry the perspective of consumer and small businesses, where we might consider some of the same people who are buyers and sellers both being users of the same platform. So if you have to draw a line on like where consumer product ends and business starts, I'm not really sure there's a clear place to put it. If we put it here, this might be the traditional definition, but there's a huge difference in the products in this consumer bucket. At the furthest end with social, you're really not executing on the same types of tactics, building a customer has when deciding to buy something online. Personally, when I worked in media and moved further towards the consumer end of the spectrum, it didn't actually leverage the skills that I have. I'm motivated by building products that customers love, such as reducing friction, making hard technical problems easy, and aligning customer values with the growth of business. So maybe the spectrum isn't actually about B2B versus consumer, but more about business model alignment. We use different tactics based on who you're selling to, but now I think the kind of product you need to build actually differs based on what you're selling for into a business model, but it's very different at the two ends of the spectrum. Social media platforms are giving users entertainment so they can extract attention and data in order to sell ads. That is not traditionally how we build software for businesses. So maybe the spectrum we should consider is how our products are monetized in alignment with our users. Do we need to entertain them, or do we need to provide tools and value to them more directly? B2B and product-led is really everything on the right side here, providing direct services with a direct revenue relationship. We're able to enable our customers with superpower. So this is the binary I see going forward for how we define consumer and B2B products. And this lens was clarifying for me in my career, because when I moved towards the entertainment end of the spectrum, I wasn't actually very good at it, even though I told myself that I was a consumer product manager. So it's helpful for me in understanding how when I made the switch from marketplaces to small business software, it actually wasn't that big a switch at all. The core problems we're solving for users are the same. I still need to build trust from users and convince them to buy our services. For me, than it was to shift to B2B, because it was harder to shift my mental model away from keeping business value aligned with consumer value than it was for me to figure out how we get small businesses to buy our software and trust the services we're offering them, because the playbook was actually the same. I think this is probably a long, true sentiment on changing jobs. You probably can't jump multiple industries or multiple things on this spectrum, but you can move along the spectrum in your career one step at a time and see if the shift is aligned with what excites you and the tactics that you want to use. So when I made this shift, it felt like a revelation. It was so exciting. My identity had been tied up in the consumer entertainment end of the spectrum. So I was excited to see this whole new world open up to me. And this is how I've made sense of my career journey. And I wondered if I was the only one who discovered that this binary of B2B versus consumer was actually a lot more fluid than I had thought. Turns out I did not invent this. Recently, I actually heard a podcast with Oji Udezu, who's the former VP of product at Calendly, who's now the CPO at Parsable. And he laid out this evolution in a way that really resonated with me. It's that we're entering a new era of software companies. So the first, we were creating products to harness new possibility enabled by technology. It wasn't easy. Punch cards were slow as a way to talk to computers, but it created new possibility. So we put up with inefficiency as it unlocked net new opportunities that didn't exist before. The next era is about utility. So we're selling efficiency, and we're selling directly to business leaders to unlock new utility within their organizations and help them see possibility and how it works in your enterprise. The clear delineation in product in this era into the third era of convenience. And this era is increasingly, our customers don't care about underlying technology. Technology isn't novel anymore, it's expected. Users want optimized workflows, and they have expectations that enterprise software will be as good as and as easy to use as consumer software. People don't care about technology for technology's sake. They want their lives to be easier. So when we're building software for businesses, it has to be simple, because no one cares how the product works. They care that it's easy. And I think of convenience. So OG's thesis is that over the next 10 years, every single enterprise company will essentially become B2C, that we're converging on ease of use as the primary differentiator and selling point for all software. I've linked to the podcast below, I think, where he talks about this transformation, because I think it's super interesting. And this thesis made a lot of sense to me in my career progression, because it means that we're all going to become consumer product managers eventually. So to come back to the first question of, is the line blurring between consumer and business? I think it's really an evolution of our industry at large. And that comes to the second question. If the lines and businesses is eroding, and it seems like it's only going to erode further, what does that mean for everyone who's new to this concept of like being customer centric and building things for customers? I have a few observations from my time, both in consumer and in building business software, for what are the places where the tactics make sense, and where do we need to think critically about where the playbook doesn't make sense. And the most important thing I can tell you is that asking how it serves our customers and business. One particular thing I love to hate on is activity feeds. So this is a screenshot of Strava, an app that is activity feed based. And I think there's a lot of execs who said to their product teams, we should make an activity feed because that's what Facebook did. Everyone else is doing it. And then a few years later, I came into a few of those companies and had to retire multiple activity feeds in my career, because I assure you, they're complicated and they're not necessarily actually serving user needs. There's perfectly good use cases for them with your product versus the relationship they have with social media and entertainment products. So why is this such a bad idea? If you're asked to build an activity feed or copy any other purely consumer feature and you feel kind of like icky about it, here's some questions that you can ask. How often do users come to your product? People go on Facebook and Instagram multiple times a day. The product needs to be dynamic and update content multiple times a day because users are incentivized by having always fresh content in their feed. Users also go to social with the explicit purpose of finding entertainment and distraction. So we provide updates on their friends, such as seeing the bike ride that they just took. Is the primary purpose of your product about entertainment, or is it about efficiency? Another example I've seen is that social media incentivizes people to share a lot of personal information. You want to be human, so you upload a photo, you upload information about your life. Most B2B software has really sparse user data. There's not a lot of reason for me to upload my photo to Zapier, for example. So don't assume that your pseudo social feature will actually look alive, because it might actually end up highlighting how low engagement on your product really is. Finally, do people actually want to have their activity about work broadcast everywhere? Tap into the behaviors that add value, such as letting users within an org collaborate. But don't just add on social to boost your engagement without understanding the core needs users have with your product. Finding ways to highlight inspiration and ways to use your product doesn't have to look directly like social media. And the heart of these questions is understanding where your user behavior is different than social or gaming products. Because user behavior is different. My needs when I'm bored on Instagram are so different than my needs when I'm trying to do my job. And we should embrace this. Look at social media. So you should really understand what I'm coming there to do and not assume that people are going to come back 10 times a day. For a product like Zapier, I think that's a good thing. If I've done my job right and you can automate away part of the work that you have to do, you might not come back for a week or a month because everything is working like you expect it to. Another example I love is search. When you go to Amazon to buy toilet paper, you know exactly what you need. You're buying convenience, and whatever brand is available will probably do the job for you. Outside of commerce, search is actually not that important. People use because their user behavior is different. They're not coming with a specific thing that they want to buy. If they're looking for inspiration on how their product is going to meet their needs, you're probably going to waste a lot of time on search because they don't have a really high intent problem to solve. They're looking for inspiration. So looking at the real world behavior, do people actually even use search, will help save you a lot of time, because even if it doesn't work very well, it doesn't actually matter if it's not a problem that your users have. And find the behaviors that matter to your work. For example, broadcasting out every action that your example, customize a dashboard where you can see activity that's relevant to you. That helps me do my job better without directly copying things from social media. I also think if you are selling software to businesses, companies who are entering into a direct payment relationship with you will place a higher premium on privacy, which means you need to be really careful when borrowing from the social end of the spectrum. A great example actually just happened yesterday. Slack announced a new invitation feature for people to direct message users in other orgs without considering harassment and moderation. So don't forget to filter the tactics that you borrow. They may have different needs than when they're even interacting with other consumer products. So how do we pick the right tactics to borrow from the social end of the spectrum? Some questions that might help you with this is really just to look at your product and talk to your users to understand their problems, and then go borrow the right tactics that social and games have already pioneered to help you solve them. For example, if more people makes the product better, we can borrow invitation tactics from social media. I just called out Slack as a bad example, but everything prior to yesterday that Slack has done is a great example. You don't have to be an admin to add new members to your team, which helps spread bottoms-up growth within organizations. You can add guests to facilitate cross-org communication. But if collaboration isn't a part of your product's value proposition, that isn't a tactic that you should worry about. But if it is, social media has written the playbook on great invitation patterns that we can borrow from. We can also look at how we help folks onboarding without adding additional sales staff. There's plenty of ways to connect users within the community who are power users who want to help others get value, or incentivize people to help one another, such as affiliate programs. A great example is Airbnb. It's a product that's literally designed around building up enough trust that you will stay in another person's home. They've done so much research on how you build up that trust. It's useful to borrow some of those tactics when you're trying to build up, how do we start this marketplace? How do we get people to trust that? Finally, ease of use can also be a differentiator as we think about entering the era of convenience. Expensify is an awesome example of using simplicity. They made the easiest expense management software, which totally disrupted in existing industries. We should really look for the best-in-class consumer products at solving the problem that your customers have, then apply them to your product through the lens of knowing your customers, not just blindly copying. Then you'll be in good shape. And a couple of questions that I found useful to evaluate if a company is really product-led, either because you're looking to make the switch or looking for a new job. Any company that claims to be product-led at least wants to try to be customer-centric. But you can also get cues from how they talk about their customer-related. Are they topics? Also, considering the social end of the spectrum, and know it's harder to make more hops as you go along. Like, you can't go from social to enterprise. So consider taking one step to an adjacent type of product or industry and seeing how it works. For me, going from marketplaces to small businesses had a very similar audience. So I benefit from common patterns when it comes to scaling and building trust and working with our customers. So as Zapier is scaling as a business, I've actually seen some really hot right now. So everyone has taken it on as a buzzword. Ask the leadership what it means and look for customer centricity in the development process and strategy, not just as a tactic to lower your sales costs. The last thing here is really personal to me, but what makes you great? Optimize for a business that values your superpowers. I didn't realize going from commerce and marketplaces would be such a good fit in growing B2B and small business software, but it makes sense. I love making hard things easy. I love explaining complicated technical concepts. And flip side, I really like when customer value is directly tied to customers paying us, as opposed to monetizing through data. That's just me. What are you best at? Where on the spectrum are those skills that you love going to be most highly valued? I'm not sure I would do well dealing with sales. So again, only making one hop on that spectrum at a time probably saved me from some pain from going into an enterprise organization and assuming that I could change everything there. Because ultimately, all software across the spectrum from social enter the era of convenience. This means the already blurry line between business and consumer is really going to disappear over time. And we should think about how we can apply our skills where the tactics we love and the business model are aligned. So that's my pitch. We are all going to be consumer product managers. And I think we have a couple minutes for questions. Turn my video back on, see if that works.
Thank you so much, Kate. Great presentation. Awesome. We do have a couple of questions already in the chat, so I will go through these, but people, we do have a few minutes, so if you've got any more, throw them in. One here from Eva. The thing with B2C product is that enough analytical data needs to be collected to make sense of how people are using the product, but with rising privacy concerns, data collection is becoming a bummer. What's your take on that?
It's hard. Yeah, I think it's really tricky. And I think we have to figure out, like, where are the places where we can get good data and where are the places we have to go use like quant and qual together. Like, go talk to our customers and observe them using prototypes, observe that we data over the past few years with GDPR, like so much more of what I would assume as baseline tracking data is becoming blocked as not essential cookies. And I think, like, we're not going to have as much data as we're used to having, and we're just going to need to adapt.
Nice. We have another here from Galen. Did you reevaluate the traditional B2C/B2B mindset before or after your move to Zapier? If after, how did you decide to move in the wrong direction?
Wrong direction before Zapier. And so I worked at a media company, which was like a positive experience, but I always felt like I was swimming upstream, trying to be customer oriented. And I ultimately, when I left, I realized that what I wanted and what made me happy wasn't aligned with the business model. So that was the first piece, being like, oh, cool, media, not for me. And I wasn't necessarily looking at B2B, but I was looking at the trend in the industry of this like polarization. And I was like, I am not happy at these their data or like selling attention or making addictive products. And it was a little bit of a happy accident that I found Zapier. They reached out to me, but the idea that the problems they were working on were the same problems I've seen before kind of was this light bulb moment for me. And then I went to Zapier and I was like 10 times happier than I had been working in media. And I was like, wait, every consumer PM who cares about the things that I care about should really be thinking about small business software, because it's the same problem set. And I don't know why we talk about it like it's a different problem set. You know, it's onboarding. Sorry about the audio issues, friends.
That's okay. It happens. It is the virtual world we live in.
Do it live
these days. Exactly. We do it live. I put your LinkedIn at the top as well, because I know some people will probably want to connect with you to kind of ask a few more questions as well. Raul has said, has the consumerization of SaaS buying changed how you plan for B2B with users having more buying power? Does it make your tactics for B2B more like B2C?
I think so. I think, you know, especially when you look at freemium models, I think there's a lot of product adoption that happens bottoms up. The best model, of course, is if you can make it happen bottoms up. But I also think it's becoming an expectation. Like I've heard stories of like people are starting to revolt at the idea that if you have enterprise software, users will just use it because they're forced to. And I think that it's like rapidly becoming not true. And UX, ease of use and onboarding consumer tactics like continue to become important in even enterprise software.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. Well, I think in terms of questions, that's it. But I know that a lot of people will probably be reaching out to you to kind of fill in some of the gaps. But honestly, no need to worry. These things happen. I think there were definitely still some very valuable takeaways within that presentation. And everyone do grab the slides from the chat or from the handouts tab at the chat. Kate, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you involved. You're getting a lot of love in the chat. So yeah, I think it's fantastic to have you join us. Thank you everyone for joining for the questions. And yeah, thank you, Kate. We hope to work with you again.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.